Queen Victoria, the famous monarch who helped to modernize Britain over her 63-year reign, had 42 grandchildren. Among them were the daughters of Princess Alice of the United Kingdom. One married her aunt's suitor, two married Russian Grand Dukes and were killed in the Revolution, one got shot, and the last died tragically young. Here are their stories. Princess Alice's first daughter, Princess Victoria Alberta Elizabeth Mathilde Marie of Hesse and by Rhine, was born on April 5th, 1863 at Windsor Castle. She was born when her mother was in London to attend the wedding of her brother, the Prince of Wales, to Princess Alexandra of Denmark. She was christened in the Green Drawing Room at Windsor Castle in Queen Victoria's arms. She was 3 years old when the family moved to Darmstadt. There she shared a room with her younger sister, Elizabeth, nicknamed Ella. Victoria was given a great education and liked to read. During the Franco-Prussian War, Victoria, alongside her mother, helped to serve food at soup kitchens. After the war, a triple tragedy struck the family. First, Victoria's younger brother, Freddie, was diagnosed with hemophilia, the disease that prevents blood clots, which was known as the royal disease as it ran in Queen Victoria's family. Freddie fell from a window and died from bleeding in the brain, leaving the family devastated. Next, Victoria fell ill with diphtheria. Ella was moved out of her room, but the family couldn't do much to keep the other children from catching the disease. Soon, everyone except Alice was showing symptoms, so she devotedly nursed her whole family. Once the youngest daughter, Marie, died of the disease, Alice was devastated and fell ill herself. She was too exhausted to recover and died, leaving Victoria as a mother figure to her grieving siblings. She wrote, "My childhood ended with her death, for I became the eldest and most responsible." After Prince Louis of Hesse was rejected by Victoria's aunt, Beatrice, he proposed to Victoria, Beatrice's niece, and he and Victoria were engaged. She and her aunt were only 6 years apart, so Victoria's groom wasn't that much older than her. Just under a decade her senior, he was a Royal Navy officer and a British citizen, born to Prince Alexander of Hesse and by Rhine and his wife, lower in rank than him, Countess Julia von Hock. The wedding had to be delayed due to the death of Victoria's uncle, Prince Leopold. Despite the fact that they were first cousins once removed, they were married on April 30th, 1884 at Darmstadt. Her father also married in secret to his longtime mistress, a divorcee of lower rank than him. The rest of the crown heads of Europe were shocked, and he was forced to annul the marriage. Victoria and her new husband, Louis, went to live in England. They had 4 children. Alice married a Greek prince and then became the mother of Prince Philip. Louise became Queen of Sweden. George became a Royal Navy officer like his father, and Louis became Viceroy of India. She was very involved in her children's upbringing, teaching them things herself, which led her son Louis to call her a walking encyclopedia. Victoria was in Russia visiting her sisters when World War I broke out between Germany and, among other countries, Russia. She got on the last ship back to Britain, but her sigh of relief didn't last too long. Her husband, Louis, was forced to resign from the Navy due to his German heritage. They did their best, though, and when George V made the patriotic decision to renounce all his German titles, they followed suit and changed their name from the German Battenberg to Mountbatten. In thanks, King George granted them a new title, and Louis became Marquess of Milford Haven. Victoria didn't trust Winston Churchill, a rising politician, since he had borrowed a book from her and never given it back. But this short moment of happiness didn't last long either. In the aftermath of the war, both Russia and Germany, which Victoria had strong ties to, had revolutions. Victoria's brother was overthrown in the German one, and her sisters were murdered in the Russian one. Victoria's husband also died in 1921. Another tragedy, her daughter Alice's nervous breakdown in 1930, resulted in Victoria taking charge of her grandson Philip's education. Her son George died as well, and it seemed that she could never get a break. In 1950, the Marchioness, a heavy smoker, fell ill with bronchitis and died on September 24th of that year, aged 84. She is buried on the Isle of Wight. Alice's second daughter, Princess Elizabeth, known by the family as Ella, was born on November 1st, 1864 in Hesse. The children were expected to clean their own rooms. When Ella was just 12, her sister, with whom she shared a room, fell ill with diphtheria. Ella was sent to go live with her grandmother, Elizabeth of Prussia, and was not allowed to return home until her family recovered. She came home to find her mother and sister dead and her family mourning. Ella said that everything was like a horrible dream. By all accounts, Ella was one of the greatest beauties of her time and was described by the future Kaiser Wilhelm II as the most beautiful girl I ever saw. He had wanted to marry her ever since Ella was a teenager and wrote her many love poems. She was uninterested and declined. He was determined to bounce back from Ella's rejection and married Augusta Victoria of Schleswig-Holstein. When Ella rejected the Grand Duke of Baden, his grandmother was nettled. To learn more about Ella Suitor's grandmother and Augusta Victoria, watch my video on the Empresses of Germany. Ella was also a very kind and pleasant person to be around, and her cousin, Queen Marie of Romania, wrote, "Her beauty and sweetness was a thing of dreams." Ella's aunt would often bring her 2 sons with her on visits, so she fell in love with her aunt's eldest son, Grand Duke Sergei Alexandrovich of Russia. Her grandmother, Queen Victoria, was not amused, but they were married on June 15, 1884. Ella did not have to convert to Russian Orthodoxy, but she did anyway and took the name Elizabeth Fyodorovna. The couple moved to St. Petersburg. They never had children but became foster parents to Sergei's niece and nephew, Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich and Grand Duchess Maria Pavlovna. Dmitry liked them much better than Maria, who never truly liked her foster mother. At Sergei and Ella's wedding, her sister Alex met the Tsarevich, Nicholas. It was through Ella's influence that they were married, much to the horror of Queen Victoria. In 1905, Sergei was assassinated and Ella was devastated. She forgave her husband's killer, who was hanged a few days later. Ella sold off all her jewels and valuables, including her wedding ring, and became a nun. She became the abbess of the convent of Saints Martha and Mary, which she had opened. She devoted her life to helping the poor, especially in the First World War, and warned her sister, by then the Tsarina, against the influence of Grigory Rasputin. That was the last time they would meet. Ella's nephew, Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich, was one of the conspirators who murdered Rasputin alongside Felix Yusupov. It's very possible that Ella knew about the plans to murder the Mad Monk. When the Russian Revolution began, Ella thought that she would be ignored since she was a nun and not a Romanov by birth, so she didn't bother to leave. She was wronged. Lenin ordered her arrest, and she was later joined by other extended Romanovs. On the night of July 17th, the same day that Tsar Nicholas II and his family were executed, Ella and the other Romanov prisoners she was with were driven away in carts. They were beaten by their guards before being thrown down a mine shaft. The prisoners all survived the fall, so a grenade was thrown in to finish them off. Ella began singing a hymn, and the guards knew they hadn't murdered the prisoners yet. A second grenade was thrown in, but Ella continued singing. When a large pile of brushwood was set alight and thrown in, the singing finally stopped. The prisoners' bodies were found a few months later. Most had died of their injuries from the fall, the grenades, and the fire. Ella had died of injuries from the fall. Her body was laid to rest in Jerusalem, and she was canonized as a holy martyr many decades later. In part 2, we'll meet Princess Irene of Hesse and Bahrain, Tsarina Alexandra Fyodorovna, and their youngest sister, Princess Marie.